Have you ever been on a journey that felt like it was straight out of a storybook? I'm talking about a trip so unusual, so wonderfully peculiar, that you have to remind yourself it was real. Imagine this. You are sitting in a train carriage, sipping a coffee, watching the world go by. Your journey starts in Hamburg, Germany. The final destination, the Danish capital, Copenhagen. This is no ordinary train ride. The train is about to do something extraordinary. It will sail across the open sea. Sounds like fantasy, right? A train that floats on water. For years, this was real. It was part of the rail link between Germany and Denmark. Travelers boarded the train, settled into seats, and prepared for an unusual adventure. The train, the whole string of carriages, would roll onto a massive ferry, not passengers switching to a boat. The train was the passenger. Ingenious engineering blended train and ship. It created a special connection between two nations. The service was called Vogelfluglinie, the bird flight line. The name captured the direct path across the water like a migrating bird. At Puttgarden, the train slowed to a crawl. Inch by inch, it was guided onto the ferry's vehicle deck. Passengers felt the rumble as steel wheels moved onto tracks inside the ship. A quiet transition from land to sea, all without leaving your seat. Sadly, that experience is now past. The Puttgarden-Rodby service was discontinued in late 2019. It marked the end of an iconic chapter in European rail history. You can't ride a train on a ship between Germany and Denmark anymore, but the memory lives on. It captured the imagination of everyone who rode it. Sometimes the most incredible adventures are the journeys themselves. Let's take a trip back in time and relive this voyage. Our story begins on a platform in Hamburg Hauptbahnhof, one of Germany's busiest and grandest railway stations. The air is filled with the familiar sounds of travel, the announcements echoing through the hall, the whistles of guards, and the gentle hum of conversations. You find your train, an intercity express, ICE, bound for Copenhagen. As you step aboard, everything seems perfectly normal. You find your seat, stow your luggage, and watch as the German countryside begins to glide past your window. The journey north is pleasant and scenic, taking you through the green landscapes of Schleswig-Holstein, Germany's northernmost state. As the train continues its journey, a subtle change begins to occur. The landscape becomes flatter, the air tastes a little saltier, and you start to see more and more water. The train is approaching the island of Fehmarn, connected to the German mainland by a bridge. This is the final stretch of land before the Great Sea Crossing. At this point, new passengers might start to wonder how exactly this train is going to get to Denmark. There are no more bridges in sight, only the vast, shimmering expanse of the Baltic Sea stretching out towards the horizon. The sense of anticipation builds with every kilometer. Then, the train slows down significantly as it pulls into the port station of Puttgarden. This isn't a typical station with bustling platforms. Instead, the tracks lead directly towards the gaping entrance of a huge white and blue Scandlines ferry. From your window, you can see cars and trucks lining up, waiting to board. But your train doesn't stop for you to get off. Instead, it proceeds slowly, carefully, rolling right up the ramp and into the cavernous belly of the ship. You feel a slight bump as the train's wheels cross the threshold from the pier onto the ferry's deck. A truly surreal moment in modern travel. Once securely parked inside the vessel, the train's engines fall silent. An announcement comes over the public address system, informing passengers that the sea crossing will take about 45 minutes. You are now free to leave the train and explore the ferry. This is where the real magic happens. You are on a train. You are on a boat. You are sailing across the sea. You can walk out of your carriage, stroll along the ferry's corridors, and head up to the open-air sun deck. The transition from a train passenger to a sea voyager is complete, marking the beginning of the most memorable part of the trip. The journey northward from Hamburg feels like any other pleasant European train ride at first. The German landscape, tidy fields, charming villages, rolls by the window in a soothing rhythm. But as the train crosses onto the island of Fehmarn, a palpable sense of anticipation fills the carriages. The scenery starts to change. Green fields give way to salty marshes and the distant glint of the Baltic Sea. This is the final land-based leg before the audacious sea crossing. You can feel the train decelerate, its engines winding down. The clickety-clack slows, more deliberate. Signs for Puttgarden appear, a functional port where land meets water. Tracks curve toward the harbor. Through the window, the colossal ferry appears, massive and patient in its berth. First-time travelers watch in wonder. You remain seated, now part of a procession to the ship's vehicle deck. Lines of cars, camper vans, enormous freight trucks. A surreal logistical ballet unfolds. The train becomes another vehicle, inching into the ferry's mouth. The approach is painstakingly slow. Rail and ferry crews appear, communicating with hand signals and radios to guide the train. Every movement is precise. Passengers press faces to windows, cameras ready. The train inches forward, the gap closes. The steel rails align perfectly with the rails inside the ferry. The transition is about to begin. Land journey over, sea voyage moments away. With a gentle nudge that is barely perceptible, the train's front wheels make contact with the ship's ramp. A low, resonant rumble vibrates through the carriage floor as the train begins to roll from the solid ground of Germany onto the floating deck of the ferry. It is a strange and unique sensation. You are moving, but the feeling is different from traveling on a normal track. The sound changes from a sharp clickety-clack to a deeper, more hollow groan as the train's weight settles onto the ship's structure. It feels as if the entire world has momentarily shifted, marking the crossing of a threshold between rail and sea. From inside, your perspective is limited. Gray steel walls slide past your window. The light dims as carriages are drawn deeper into the ship's hold. It feels like entering a long, wide tunnel that floats on the Baltic Sea. The train is often split into two sections to fit onto parallel tracks within the ferry. Your half might stop while another section is shunted into position beside you. Through the opposite windows, carriages of your own train glide past. The scale of the operation is immense. This multi-ton machine becoming cargo is a marvel of engineering, a perfectly choreographed dance between rail and sea. With a soft hiss of the brakes, your carriage comes to a complete halt. The low hum of onboard systems is the only sound for a moment. A gentle, almost imperceptible sway confirms. You are afloat. The loading process is complete. The train is parked on the vehicle deck, surrounded by cars and lorries. For the next 45 minutes, the train is cargo, a passenger on a much larger vessel navigating the open waters of the Fehmarn Belt. Once the train is securely positioned inside the ferry, its engines fall completely silent. The familiar vibrations of rail travel cease, replaced by a much subtler, deeper thrum that emanates from the ferry's own powerful engines far below. A calm settles over the carriages. An announcement, often made in German, Danish, and English, echoes through the carriage's public address system. The calm voice of a crew member informs everyone that the train will remain stationary for the duration of the sea crossing, which will last approximately 45 minutes. Passengers are invited to leave their seats, exit the train, and explore the amenities of the ferry. Stepping out of the train carriage onto the steel floor of the vehicle deck is a peculiar experience. You stand beside the massive, silent train, looking up at its familiar shape in this completely alien environment. The air in the hold is cool and smells of salt and engine fumes, a stark contrast to the filtered air inside the carriage. You join a river of fellow passengers making their way towards the stairwells that lead up to the passenger decks. As you ascend the stairs, you leave the dim, industrial world of the vehicle deck behind. You emerge into the bright, open spaces of the ferry's passenger lounges. Here, the world changes completely. There are cafes, shops, and comfortable seating areas with large panoramic windows offering stunning views of the sea. The gentle rocking of the ship is more noticeable here, a constant reminder that you are indeed sailing. You have successfully transitioned from a passenger on a train to a passenger on a ship, all without ever having to step onto a station platform. The adventure on the Fehmarn Belt has truly begun. While the indoor lounges offer comfort and warmth, the true highlight for many travelers is the journey up to the open-air sun deck. It's a moment of liberation, a wonderful and unexpected break in the journey. Your first instinct is often to head straight for the windows. Ascending the final set of stairs and pushing open the heavy, sea-proof door feels like stepping into another dimension. The muffled hum of the interior is instantly replaced by the raw sounds of the sea. You are greeted by the rush of the wind, the cry of gulls circling overhead, and the constant, deep-throated roar of the ship's engines. The air is fresh and crisp, carrying the unmistakable salty tang of the Baltic Sea, a scent that invigorates the senses and clears the mind. From this high vantage point, the view is simply breathtaking. You have a full 360-degree panorama of the Fehmarn Belt. Below, the deep blue water churns into a white, frothy wake that trails behind the ferry for as far as the eye can see. On a clear day, the sun glints off the surface, creating a dazzling, shimmering carpet of light. This is the perfect spot for reflection and photography. Passengers dot the deck, cameras and phones in hand, trying to capture the magnificent scenery. You see other vessels on the horizon, cargo ships, sailing boats, and perhaps even the sister ferry making its return journey to Germany. The sheer scale of the operation becomes apparent when you look down and realize that somewhere beneath your feet, an entire train is being carried effortlessly across the waves, a concept that remains astonishing no matter how many times you experience it. Even on a gray or windy day, the sun deck holds a certain dramatic charm. The wind whips your hair and clothes, and the waves might be choppier, crashing against the hull with more force. It makes you feel the power of the sea and appreciate the sturdiness of the vessel you are on. For those 45 minutes, you are not just a passenger on a train. You are an explorer, a mariner, standing on the deck of a ship in the middle of the great Baltic Sea, a memory that will stay with you long after the journey is over. The 45-minute crossing seems to pass in a flash. Just as you have fully settled into the rhythm of the sea, a subtle shift in the atmosphere signals the journey's end. You might notice a new strip of land appearing on the horizon, slowly growing larger and more defined. This is the Danish island of Lolland, your destination. An announcement is made over the ship's public address system, first in Danish, then in German and English. It informs passengers that the ferry is approaching the port of Rodby and that they should begin to make their way back to their vehicles. For those of us on the train, this is our cue to descend from the upper decks. You walk back down the same stairwells you came up, a river of people flowing back towards the vehicle hold. Returning to the vehicle deck is like re-entering another world. The air is cool again, and the massive form of your train is waiting for you, silent and still. Finding your carriage and stepping back inside is a strange sensation. You look out the window and see the gray steel walls of the ferry. You can feel the ship maneuvering, slowing down as it prepares to dock. With a gentle bump and a low shudder, the ferry makes contact with the pier at Rodby. Through the window, you see the Danish railway tracks perfectly aligned with the ones inside the ship. The moment is almost here. The train is about to wake from its slumber and continue its journey on solid ground. The moment the ferry is securely docked at the Danish port of Rodby, a new phase of the journey begins. From inside your carriage, you can hear the deep, metallic groan of the ship's bow ramp being lowered onto the pier. A sliver of bright daylight appears, growing wider as the massive door opens to reveal the world outside. Suddenly, you feel a familiar jolt. The train's systems are coming back to life. The lights flicker, the ventilation hums, and deep within its mechanical heart, the engines begin to stir from their 45-minute slumber. A few moments later, with a gentle push, the train begins its slow roll forward. The sound of the wheels changes once more, from the hollow echo on the ship's deck back to the solid, reassuring clickety-clack of a terrestrial railway track. The train has officially made landfall in Denmark. As the train clears the ferry, the Danish landscape begins to unfold outside your window. You glide past the port infrastructure of Rodby, a busy hub of maritime activity. You see the cars and trucks that were your fellow passengers on the ship now driving off onto Danish roads, each going their separate way. Once the entire length of the train is back on solid ground, it pauses briefly at the Rodby Ferge station. This is a purely operational stop. Looking out the window, you see the ferry you just left, already preparing for its return voyage to Germany. You are now fully in Denmark, and the final stretch of your journey to the capital city of Copenhagen is about to begin. The sea voyage is over, but the adventure continues. As the train enters the final 30 minutes of its journey, the signs of a major city become unmistakable. The density of buildings increases dramatically. The railway line becomes a complex web of intersecting tracks. You start to see the distinctive S-trains of Copenhagen's suburban rail network running on parallel lines, zipping commuters back and forth. Then the train slides into the grand cavernous train shed of Copenhagen's Hovedbanegård. The station, its magnificent wooden roof, its historic brickwork, is a destination in itself. As the train glides to a final gentle halt, a sense of completion washes over you. An announcement confirms the arrival, and the doors hiss open, releasing you onto the bustling platform. You have arrived. The journey that started in Hamburg, that saw your train board a ship and sail the Baltic Sea, has reached its successful conclusion in the heart of the Danish capital. Stepping off the train and onto the platform, you take a moment to look back at the Intercity Express that has been your home for the past several hours. You join the flow of passengers heading towards the station concourse, ready to begin your exploration of Copenhagen. All good things must come to an end. And so it was for this magical train journey. After decades of faithful service, the final whistle blew for the Germany-Denmark train ferry in December 2019. It was a decision driven by progress, efficiency, and changing priorities in European transport. The world was moving towards faster, more direct connections. The charming, leisurely pace of the train ferry became a bottleneck in a high-speed network. For Puttgarden and for Rodby, the end marked a major change. The sight of a train rolling onto a ship was part of their identity. Car ferries would continue, but the departure of the trains was poignant. On the final day, nostalgia filled the air. Regular commuters, railway enthusiasts, and journalists, they took photos, shared stories, and paid tribute. It was a bittersweet farewell. The train ferry was an adventure, and its retirement left a small, boat-shaped hole in the heart of European rail travel. With the end of the Bird flight line for trains, a new route was established. From December 2019 onwards, trains traveling from Hamburg to Copenhagen took a completely land-based path. The centerpiece of this new, all-land route is another marvel of Danish engineering, the Great Belt Fixed Link. Instead of sailing over the water, the train now speeds across it, high above the waves on one of Scandinavia's most iconic structures. It is a different kind of train-over-water experience. Faster, more modern, more direct, but perhaps lacking the quirky, hands-on charm of the old ferry. Passengers now remain in their seats for the entire duration of the trip, with no 45-minute break to stretch their legs and breathe the sea air. The journey is smooth, efficient, and predictable, a seamless ride from one city center to another without the interruption of a sea voyage. But for those who cherished the unique, story-worthy adventure of the train ferry, the new route felt a little less magical. It was the price of progress, a trade-off between romance and rationality in the ever-evolving world of travel. The story of the connection between Germany and Denmark is not over. It is simply entering its next, most ambitious chapter. This is the Fehmarn Belt Fixed Link, an 18-kilometer-long immersed tunnel that will create a direct road and rail path between Puttgarden in Germany and Rodby in Denmark. This time, travelers will journey beneath the waves instead of sailing upon them. The train journey between Hamburg and Copenhagen is expected to be reduced to just 2.5 hours. For drivers, a journey that takes 45 minutes by ferry will be reduced to a mere 10-minute drive. Construction of this colossal tunnel is already well underway. Giant hollow concrete sections of the tunnel are being built on land, which will then be floated out to sea and carefully lowered into a trench dug on the seabed. Inside this tube, there will be a 4-lane motorway and a double-track electrified railway. The romance of stepping out of the train to feel the sea breeze on the sun deck will be replaced by the smooth, uninterrupted speed of a journey through a state-of-the-art tunnel. The spirit of the journey will change from a maritime adventure to a marvel of subterranean travel, writing a bold new line in the long and fascinating story of crossing the Fehmarn Belt. The story of the train that sailed across the sea has now come to its end. For decades, the Vogelfluglinie offered more than a connection between Germany and Denmark. It offered a truly unforgettable adventure. It was a journey of delightful contradictions, the rhythmic clickety-clack of the rails, the gentle roll of the waves. This unique blend of land and water travel, a pause to breathe in the salty air from a ferry deck, was an experience etched into memory. Rolling a whole train onto a ship captured the imagination. A wonderfully eccentric, brilliant solution, like something from a child's storybook. In our rush toward efficiency, the train ferry's memory is a tribute to whimsy and wonder. You can no longer sail between Puttgarden and Rodby, but the spirit of that journey lives on, in stories of passengers stepping out to watch the German coast disappear, in photographs of trains nestled inside the belly of a ship, and in Europe's great rail journeys, trains that climb majestic mountains, those that speed through tunnels deep beneath the sea. The train ferry was a unique chapter in Europe's rail story. Though the tracks on the ferry are now empty, the echo of the train's whistle and the cry of the gulls remain a cherished memory, a reminder of the time when a train, against all odds, truly learned to sail.